Hello, Ruby here. If you are new to this channel, I am a professional psychic medium, tarot reader, archetypal astrologer, practicing priestess, and a big lover and collector of tarot and oracle cards. And this video has been highly requested by many of you. Many of you have asked me to make a video on this subject, and that is how I work with the Divine Feminine Oracle by Megan Watterson. I've shared in some past videos that it took me a long time to really figure out how I connect and work with this deck. I definitely was not impressed with it at first open, and it took me a while to connect in. And, as I've shared that in past videos, many of you have made comments that you're still in the place with this deck where you're not connecting and you don't really know how to work with it. You're not super impressed by it. So my hope in making this video is that if you're in that place, you own the deck, you haven't regifted it, but you quite haven't found your sweet spot with it, that just hearing how I work with it might give you just kind of a new way to come into relationship with the deck. And, if you don't own this deck, this will give you a chance to really see some of the images, get a feel for the energy, get a feel for how I work with this deck, and decide if you would like to have it in your collection. So as I shared in my last video, there is some construction going on in my apartment complex, and I have heard the construction people around today, so I apologize for any background noise. As this channel grows over time, I'm hoping that I will be able to invest in some better filming equipment and editing equipment, but for now, we're keeping it a little low budget, and for that, I apologize, and I am grateful for those of you that are tuning in, regardless of the quality of film and audio and all of that. So, diving into the content, this is the Divine Feminine Oracle. It is by Megan Watterson. Their artwork is by Elizabeth Cheever Gessman. It is a 53 card deck, so it's an oracle deck that I love 40 card and up oracle deck. I feel like you're really getting your money's worth, that you really have a universe to dive into, and so for the size, I really do enjoy this deck. It is published by, I want to say it's published by Hay House. Yes, it is published by Hay House. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Megan Watterson, she is an author and a theologian. She wrote the book Mary Magdalene Revealed. I think that's the name of it. Yeah, Mary Magdalene Revealed, which is her own, in her own words, a gleaning wisdom from the Gnostic texts, particularly the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So if you are new to working with Mary Magdalene, or you are new to the wisdom traditions of Gnostic Christianity, that's a really easy read, an enjoyable read, and one I encourage you to explore if any of those topics interest you and you're at the beginning of your journey. Because I'd already read that book before I purchased this deck, I came into this deck with high expectations. As many of you know, Mary Magdalene is one of the main deities that I work with. I have a very close connection to Mary Magdalene and Isis, and we have got Mary Magdalene right on the box. So I was primed, like many of you, to love this deck. I'm obsessed with the Divine Feminine. I was a fan of Megan Watterson. I, devoted to practice with Mary Magdalene, and it fell flat for me in the beginning. So this is the guidebook, or the guidebook. This is the inside of the box. My brain is ahead of my words. So we have a reproduction of the card backing. This is the guidebook. And let's see here. I got my cards all mixed up. These are the backings. So, I've had this deck for several years now, and I will say It stayed in great shape. When it comes to Hay House quality of decks, I find that they really vary deck to deck. And this is gonna feel really similar to like the Herbal Astrology Oracle, if you own that deck. It's got like this more, is this like a linen cardstock? I need to become better educated on all the different types of cardstock, but it's not shiny. It's maybe like a matte with more of like a linen-y feel to it. And I've no complaints about the cardstock after, you know, working with it for several years now. It's got a little wear and tear, that's to be expected when you are working with the deck frequently. So this is the guidebook. It has a little spiel in the beginning about the oracle, how to work with it. Megan Watterson has something she calls like a soul voice meditation. And then we get the card definitions. And for each card definition, we get like a tiny little reproduction of the card. And then there is a long, I don't say long, like long for an oracle card, like description, but just some paragraphs on Mary Magdalene in terms of like her historical legacy. And then there is a little blurb that says, when your soul selects her card, that just again more goes into some of the symbolism or themes around this particular face of the divine feminine. And then in the very end of the card description, you get a soul voice meditation, which is going to be a question you can bring into a meditative, contemplative space. And for Mary Magdalene, we have, where has my love not yet reached? And then an intention, I am the bridge between heaven and earth. I am fully human and fully divine. So it's like an affirmation statement that can connect you in with that specific face of deity. Now, like many of you, I hate how this guidebook is laid out. And it became radically clear to me the minute I started working with this deck that Megan Watterson had no experience with tarot or oracle. And for this, honestly, she probably should have consulted somebody that actually works with tarot and oracle. Because how this guidebook is set up is, you know, these are the card themselves. So we have Shakana, and there's no numbering on the card itself, which is fine. Usually if there isn't numbering on a card, you will find that card alphabetical. The cards will be in alphabetical order. The cards are not in alphabetical order. To find the card in the guidebook, you have to go to the table of contents page at the beginning. This is a major flaw in the design of this deck. I have never worked with another deck where you have to look into a table of contents page to find the card meaning, and that is the only way you're gonna find it. They're grouped, like I feel like there is some like thought behind the grouping, in that, you know, you'll see that a lot of like the Christian deities and mystics are grouped together, the Hindu deities and saints, mystics are grouped together, but it's numbered, or it's like categorized alphabetically in the contents. So it's like we have it categorized alphabetically, but then we've got all of these different like page numbers. So we have a Nana at 202, Isis at 170, Joan of Arc at 9. Like, it makes no sense. Why? So if you haven't purchased this deck yet and you're thinking about it, just know that this is probably gonna drive you bananas. Like, it has driven everyone who has purchased this deck bananas, I am sure. So that is the first major flaw in this deck. The other thing that I would maybe not necessarily describe as a flaw, but if you're somebody that is using tarot and oracle for divination, you should probably be aware of this. This deck does not read like a divination tool if you're using it the way you use other tarot and oracle decks. Like if that's, say you draw a card and then you, let's say what we're gonna pull, you pull Sappho, the poetess, and you look in the guidebook, you're not gonna get like a divinatory meaning. You're not gonna get, oh, this card shows up when you're about to cultivate deep intimacy or explore a new aspect of devotion or your sexuality. Like you're not gonna really get any of that in the guidebook meaning. Instead, you're gonna get some paragraphs on who Sappho was historically and culturally, and then some like a meditation question. And so if you're looking for a deck to use for divination that features the divine feminine, there's other options. I like the Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle. I want to say that's the name of the deck, and I want to say the author's name is Claudia Olivios, but that is just from memory. So that deck should be in my Amazon storefront, which I've already told you, like, make a little bit of commission on that, but that's not why it's there. I'm not going to get rich on my Amazon storefront. It's for you to have a place where you can really see all the decks I talk about. So they're all in one place. That's the easiest way for me to categorize that for you. So, you know, I now use this as a more divinatory deck, and as we, you know, as I keep talking and kind of unfolding my experience with this deck, you'll learn what that is. But if we're just going by how you would normally work with an oracle deck for the purpose of divination, you're not going to get that with this. Okay, so, and those are the two main things to be aware of. Now, not everyone is a fan of this artwork, but I actually am a big fan of this deck and how it presents a lot of faces of the divine feminine. And so for each card, what you're going to get is, I don't really love this Kali though. Like some of these images I really like, I'm not a big fan of this Kali. I really enjoy the images from the Kali Oracle by Alana Fairchild. Not everyone likes those images. I've read and watched some scathing reviews about that deck, but I personally really love that artwork. I believe Jimmy Manton is the artist on the Kali Oracle. But we have the title, my broken nail, y'all. We have the title of the goddess, so Kali. And then there is, you know, the mother of the universe. That's how Megan Watterson is describing this specific face of the divine feminine. And then each card is going to have like an affirmation. So this says, I release all that doesn't serve me. It's time to be the truth of who I am. And so for that, I would use that as your divination tool. I would use the few lines. So for White Buffalo Calf Woman, the prophetess of the sacred way, my heart is a compass, the path of love is true abundance. If you're looking for a divinatory meaning, you'll have to read between the lines a little bit here. But I would let that be your divinatory answer. So when I first purchased this deck, I was using it, you know, in the way that I would use any other oracle, and, you know, just drawing the card and then just trying to find it in the guidebook and then just like reading a bunch of the historical context in the guidebook. I just wasn't really doing it for me. And so I put this deck away for a while, a little frustrated, honestly, because I love the faces of the divine feminine and the saints and the mystics, and of course my favorite card, Mary Magdalene. Love this depiction of Mary Magdalene, honestly. I think it's so beautiful. I would love to have this framed someday. I know that the author sells these prints. I just haven't gotten around to purchasing and framing one. So I love the choices that Megan Watterson makes. I love the choices of deity that she chooses. I love the choices of saints and mystics that she chooses. I studied Christian mysticism. I actually grew up in a Christian cult, so that was kind of my gateway into spirituality, is getting into the Christian mystics when I was in my later teens, like authors like Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross. And I also love the inclusion of some of the Hindu saints, like Mirabai, as somebody that studied bhakti really seriously with one of my teachers when I was on a path of being a yoga teacher. So overall, and we've got a Nana, and there's such a beautiful curation of divine feminine beings in this deck that you won't find it in any other deck. You're not going to find this selection of deity and of saints and mystics in any other deck. And I think it was for that reason. And now I love the story of Mirabai. She's such an inspiration to me. And again, we have like Sappho, right? So it's I think the inclusion of the divine feminine archetypes in this deck and how much that resonated for me kept me from giving up on this deck forever. And so maybe about a year ago, what I did is I took this deck, and I love the inclusion of Enheduanna. And if you don't know who Enheduanna is and you are on a priestess path, I very much encourage you to research her. She is also such an inspiration to me. She was a high priestess of Inanna, and like I think the world's first published poet. So I'm going to show you how I work with this deck now. So I got the inkling to put this deck on my bedside, on my nightstand. So this is now my nightstand deck. And I never work with the guidebook because F that guidebook, honestly. If you want to know more about like the historical legacy and who these figures are and knowing where they show up historically and like what they did and when they were born and when they died, like if we're not talking about faces of deity here, we're talking about some of the saints and mystics, use the guidebook. But for any type of divinatory meaning, save yourself the misery. Okay, so I leave this deck on my nightstand, and then almost every night when I'm like getting into bed, what I will do is I will draw 1 to 3 cards. And I'm somebody who's very connected to the faces of deity in this deck, so this makes sense for me. If you don't feel connected to the archetypes in this deck, because there's plenty of faces of the divine feminine that aren't included, then I would skip this one. So I will pull a card. We have Yeshi Sogol. She was a Tibetan Buddhist Dakini, I would say. And I will take some time to really connect in with this face of deity in my bed. And I will just kind of open myself up to receive what is there for me with the card. So we have Yeshi Sogol. I'm mispronouncing her last name, even though I love her. And her little tagline here is, embodiment is the deepest bliss. My body was made for enlightenment. And so I'll just kind of like start asking myself, oh, do I need to come into my body more? Like, is there like a practice of like embodiment or like sex magic that wants to come through? Is there certain Tibetan wisdom traditions that I should be exploring? Does this archetype actually want to show up in my life? I know that she in particular is connected to a tiger. So like, is there any like tiger medicine that I need? And I'll start kind of going in that direction, percolating on those questions. And it's always something that's relevant to my life. It's always something that's relevant to my life. And then I will take the card and I will face it upright. and I will just have it on my nightstand. So now my nightstand's almost become a little altar for her, and I have a little bit of Palo Santo on my nightstand, and I usually have like a candle for Magic Fairy candles on there. I usually will have like a little spray or a little oil for Magic Fairy candles on my nightstand. And then maybe I'll do some type of little ritual for myself, or maybe I'll just put this on the nightstand and go to bed. And then when I wake up in the morning, I kind of have a representation of the last little message from Spirit I got when I fell asleep. So that is pretty much the only way I work with this deck. I don't use it for client readings. I don't have it on my reading table. But I love working with this deck this way. And like, I'll just give you like another little example. Sometimes I dream about the goddesses that I pull the card for. So this is like one of my little bedtime routines. Okay, so let's see who else we have here. Okay, Vaira Yogini, the essence of all Buddhas. So this is the second card that I have drawn that's connected to, you know, a Buddhist wisdom stream. So I'm just keeping that in mind. And this says, I have the power to make each moment sacred. Everything is material for my liberation. This is so impactful for where I am in my life right now. There's some things in my life that have been really challenging, in particular one situation where I've been really coming at it from an ego perspective. It's been really bothering me. It's been really grating on me. And this morning I made a decision that I was going to look at it from a higher perspective, and ended up making an Instagram video about that practice, because it's a practice that I am usually doing all the time. And for whatever reason in this situation, I was feeling all victimized by it. And by looking at that situation from a higher perspective, which to me is very, you know, Buddhist, releasing all the judgment, all the story, all the narrative around it, and just seeing it with a loving, compassionate, detached gaze, I was able to make that situation material for my liberation. So if I draw this card, I'm just going to connect in. I find the imagery to be very beautiful. So, you know, I will take some time to even connect in with the imagery, but I know some people don't like the artwork in this deck, and I totally get it. I know it's a little like computer generated, and so I get why some people don't like it. I personally have no problem with it. I personally think it's pretty. I like the color palette too. And I'll just connect in with that archetype, maybe journey with that archetype. You know, sometimes I do this when I'm like watching Netflix on my iPad at night. Sometimes I do this when I like listening to music, or I'm with my kids. So, you know, it doesn't always have to be this utmost sacred thing. You know, divination is something that you just fit into your life, you know. And that's really another thing this card is speaking to, making every moment sacred. You know, instead of having spirituality so separate from your life, how can you bring it into every moment of your life, you know? And that's, to me, is the devotional path. So again, if I'm drawing this card, it's sitting right here. She's just going to sit on my nightstand, and she's going to hang out with me. And this is going to be the face of the Divine Feminine, or the medicine from the Divine Feminine wisdom stream that's coming in for me at this moment. And I, like I said, I love to work with this deck that way. So it only took me like 2 years probably to find a way that I really connected with this deck. I probably got this deck like right after it came out. But I got there. And if you're struggling to connect with this deck, maybe try this. And if it's not your nightstand, you know, maybe your altar, or maybe another place in your home where you can, you know, revisit it. So that's all for today. I hope that was helpful. And as always, I'm sending you love and wishing you well.